Welcome to Pub Natter, hosted by Tim Ives and Justin Perry. We both moved to Rutland over 20 years ago, but our careers kept us away from home, so we don't know as much about the county as we should. So we thought, now that we're getting old and slowing down, how can we meet interesting folk and learn as much about Rutland as possible? The answer is to host a podcast, or is that a pubcast? We hope to host each podcast in a different pub in and around Rutland, so we get an excuse to visit a new pub every week or so, whilst letting interesting, mostly local people and organisations tell their stories and at the same time promoting the ales and the pubs. We have plenty to choose from in Rutland, so this project could take some time. We have spent many hours in pubs up and down the land discussing every topic you could possibly imagine. We sit on opposite sides of the political spectrum and are probably the only two friends in Rutland that didn't fall out over the Brexit referendum. Given this and our backgrounds, Tim, Royal Air Force, dental healthcare and postgraduate education, and Justin, construction industry and construction law specialist, we reckon we have got the skills to get our teeth into our subjects and build some stories for our listeners. Most episodes will start with 10 or 15 minutes with the landlord, discussing their backstory, the history of the pub and its offerings, and then a special guest with a special interest area of expertise. We hope you enjoy our chats and it encourages you to go out and explore our little county and all that it has to offer. Like the motto says, there is much in little. When rain stops play, it's time for some pub natter. Now that we are entering the festive season, we wanted to take the opportunity to produce a pub natter Christmas special. And what better way than to promote our armed forces veterans and the organisations and volunteers that support them. Having served in the Royal Air Force for 22 years, this is something close to my heart and one that requires more than one episode. Over the Christmas period, we are going to tell the story of the Armed Forces Breakfast Clubs, which started off a few years ago with a few military veterans meeting up on Saturdays in a local garage in Hull for a bacon sandwich and a chat. It has now become the biggest military veterans community in UK and is now starting to grow globally. In the first episode, we natter with Dereck Hardman, the veteran who is responsible for creating this concept and managing the organisations. Episodes 2 and 3 were recorded in the Grain Store pub during the December Rutland Armed Forces Breakfast Club. We natter with some of the veterans and people who are supporting them. Do not miss our natter with John Bomber Beckett, a 95-year-old veteran. If you have an interest in the armed forces, you are a military veteran or know or have known a military veteran, you will love listening to these discussions. There is also lots of useful information relating to helping ex-servicemen who may be having mental or physical health-related issues. In this first of 3 related episodes, we set the scene by having a natter with Dereck Hardman, the military veteran responsible for creating the concept and managing the Armed Forces Breakfast Clubs. We apologise for the sound quality in this episode. We had to record this via Zoom. Dereck is not a resident of Rutland and in fact lives over 100 miles away in Hull. What Dereck has achieved is simply outstanding, and his story simply has to be heard and promoted to as many people as possible. Please share this with your friends and family. When rain stops play, it's time for some pub natter. So we're here with Dereck Hardman, the founder of the Armed Forces Breakfast Clubs, and we're going to learn a little bit about Dereck and the amazing achievement of getting this off the ground and kind of like where it is now. So Dereck, to start off with, just tell us about your history. So you were in the army.
I was, mainly the Cold War, did a few tours of duty in places, but I was Royal Engineers, I joined in 1981. I came out in 1991, did 10 years. Um, I was mainly based in Germany, in Hamel, in what was West Germany. And then my last 2.5 years, for some reason, they posted me to 5 Airborne Brigade. So, there we go.
So how was it settling into civilian life?
I just left the military like anybody else would. Hit civilian life, and then it's like find somewhere to live, find a job, find your feet basically. How do you pay a phone bill? How do you pay electric bill, gas bill, council tax, whatever. When you're a civilian, your parents help you with that. They sort of teach you to be an independent person in civilian life. When you've served in the military after 10, 15, 20 years, you in civilian life, you're basically starting where a 16-year-old starts, but you could be in his late 20s, early 30s, 40s, and that's where people struggle. And there was something missing. I always felt there was something missing. And it was basically that camaraderie, that being part of the tribe. So it was years later. I was starting a business, and I was converting a vehicle. It was an ex-military vehicle for a business. And I was asking people, does anybody know somebody that's ex-military that is still in the business with vehicles, mechanics and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
And they showed me, and somebody pointed me at a guy called Pete Barker, who had a garage on Sutton Fields in Hull, a motor engineers. And I went to see him. And I was working in schools at the time. I was doing a bit of teaching. And I was going there on a Saturday morning to work on this vehicle, and I realised sort of every Saturday morning, maybe one or two of us, the lads that he'd served with, would turn up. We'd have a bit of a naffy break, as we called it in the military, but at 10 o'clock we'd send out some bacon butties, and the kettle would go on, and we'd stand there, eating those butties and taking the mick out of each other royally. And when I used to leave later on, it was almost like I had a recharge. It was almost like, that missing piece that I'd sort of subconsciously felt was missing had been sort of put in place. And then when the vehicle was done, that I was still going there on a Saturday morning, and I'd bump into people in the street with old vets badge on, and I'd say to them, "What do you do on a Saturday morning?" And they'd say, "Oh, well, I used to get dragged out shopping with the wife." I'd say, "Well, do you want a good excuse to get out of that?" So they'd say, "Why? What you got?" And I'd say, "Well, there's a few vets meet up for the garage and have a butty and a brew and a bit of banter at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning." And I'd bump into people while I was shopping and say, "What are you doing on Saturday morning?" After I'd had a bit of a chat with them. And then they'd come along. In fact, inside of 5 minutes, you'd see the shoulders go down, they'd relax, they'd be chatting, with all sorts of people. All you could hear was laughter. And the following week, they'd come back and they'd bring someone else that they knew with them. And we ended up with this garage. Pete Barker's still doing all his work on his vehicles, obviously, like people's customers' vehicles. He's having to honk his horn to move the 50 people out of the way that were there, to move the car out of the garage. And that's how it went. That's how it went. It went from just me and doing up a vehicle in the garage with Pete to 50 vets turning up every Saturday morning in the garage, come rain or shine, cold or warm, having butties and banter.
So, did you eventually find your way to a pub?
Well, it was kind of good like that. It was almost like, see, inside of it, I never thought of it being anywhere else. I never really, it was satisfying the need that I had, you know what I mean? And obviously that all them other pets had. So it never really occurred to me that this could work everywhere. And it sort of started in 2007 and it worked till 2014. And it was my 50th birthday. And I don't look it, obviously. But
you do.
I used to. Anyway, it was my 50th birthday, and the guys that had a poke around on my social media and found a few lads that I'd served with, and obviously invited them without me knowing. And my birthday actually fell on the Saturday morning when we had breakfast. So I rocked up and walked into the garage, and there was like 5 lads that I'd served with that I hadn't seen for 20 years or 30 years. You know what I mean? So by the time the fourth one had walked up to me and said, "Wow, this is amazing. I love this. I wish we had something like this where I live." That was kind of, the light bulb moment. I went, well, why couldn't we? Why can't we do that? Why can't we start it? It doesn't have to be in a garage. It could be in a pub or a carvery or a cafe. And we started planning it straight away. We started up the next clubs in the summer of 2014. In the first year, we had 120 breakfast clubs all over the UK. And
So how did that happen? How did it expand? How did you market
well,
it?
we didn't really have to market it. It's all been organic. It's so these five lads that had attended the breakfast clubs, they'd obviously come from different parts of the country. So they went away and we said we'd got a Facebook group. We'd put a Facebook group together because Facebook seemed to be like the most sort of appropriate or the best platform to do what we were doing, where people could join it, go on, put posts on, comments, sort of carry on the banter, if you like, between meetings. So we just replicated that. They went off to wherever they lived. Like we had a lad I'd said lived in Newcastle, so we started up the Newcastle Armed Forces and Veterans Breakfast Club, fired up a Facebook group. He knew one or two vets, he added them to it. They knew one or two vets, they got added to it. Next thing you know, they've arranged to meet in a pub on the second Saturday of the month at 10 o'clock, a Weatherspoons, and they'd rock up, say it was fantastic, and then somebody knows somebody somewhere else, well, I've got a mate that lives in, Glasgow. Next thing, the Glasgow Breakfast Club started, and I'm firing up these Facebook groups, and I thought, well, we better have a set of guidelines. So I kind of talked to a solicitor and, sort of make sure we was all sort of legal in what we were saying to people. It was just for people's protection, so nobody was discriminated against, etc. And we put these set of guidelines together, and I was just firing up these Facebook groups around the country. Inside a year, 120, and since the summer of 2014, we've started on average more than one club every single week since the summer of 2014. We're now 480. I think we're heading to 500 now.
So 500 clubs.
Yeah, heading towards, yeah.
And it's not just UK now either, is it?
There's a whole new sort of network starting across France with French veterans. Like we started off with expats over there, that were starting them, because there was a few vets living around them, British vets. But then they would invite along French vets that they knew who would come to the club, and they'd go, well, I've got a friend that lives in such and such a place. And we've appointed somebody she's Claire LaRoche. She's actually, I think her husband is half French, and his surname's LaRoche. I think he was British Airborne and French Commando. But she kind of runs that network over there, and they're now starting wholly French clubs, and apparently the French veterans organisations love the concept of the model as well. Well, it's so easy, why wouldn't they? So now we're getting French clubs firing up with French vets because they have the same issues that British vets do. Clearly, there's a little network sort of smouldering away in Germany. Sort of the HQ of that's in Berlin, clearly, and that's more of a NATO breakfast club because they have all sorts of nationalities in there: Polish, Czech, Germans, Americans. We've got 3 or 4 in the US that we're a bit like the Beatles, are struggling to break America. But
Yeah.
they're dotted around the world. There's one in New Zealand, there's a couple in Australia, there's one in Bulgaria, there's even one in Thailand. There's about 3 in Cyprus. The Spain, France, Brittany. There's about 15 countries, I think, altogether, as well as the UK. The vast majority of them are in the UK, clearly, but one of the clubs in North Wales, the members are sort of turning up as the pub's opening and parking the cars and get out walking towards the door, and there was a guy standing there looking a bit dishevelled, like he wasn't doing too well in life. And as they walked up, he turned around to the lady that ran the pub and said, is this the Breakfast Club, you know, for the armed forces? And she said, yeah, that's right. So he said, oh, I can't remember his name now, but he's Dave, for example, shook her hand and said, oh, I'm Dave. It's two para. So she went, oh, well, welcome, come in, you know, and you come. So they sat at a big table. She was up this end with a few of the lads, and the banter was going as they was drinking the brews and eating breakfast. And when she looked down the table, Dave sort of sat there eating his breakfast, and she could see tears dropping off the end of his nose. So she said, oh, she phoned me up afterwards to tell me that she'd gone round the table to where he was sitting, got herself between him and the rest of the club, put her arm around him and said, are you okay? And he went, yeah, I'm good, thanks, yeah. So she said, well, I was just sitting up there, you looked a bit upset. He said, no, he said, I'm just listening to the banter and realised I've come home. I went, oh, wow. You know what I mean? And that's basically, that's been echoed in so many different ways. So many vets who have had messages off of wives that have said it saved our marriage. And I've said, well, how does it do that? How does it save your marriage? And I've had a wife say to me, well, he turned into a miserable old bastard. But since he's been going to the Breakfast Club, I've got back the soldier, the happy, lucky guy soldier that I met and married and fell in love with. With Adam saying, we now have a social life. We go out more than our kids do. I've had a daughter get in touch with me and said, my dad's a hero. I didn't even know. I went to a Breakfast Club with him. He sat down opposite somebody that he'd served with in the same regiment. And the things that they talked about, she said, my chin was on the table. I couldn't believe what was coming out of my dad's mouth. And this other guy, my dad's an actual hero. And I never knew because he'd never talked about it. And he wouldn't do unless he was in that environment. You know, so I had a guy at Scarborough this year was the Armed Forces. Last year it was Armed Forces Day in Scarborough. And we have an event show where we attend the Armed Forces Day wherever it is in the UK, the national event. And it was Scarborough, not this year, last year. It was Scarborough. I was stood in front of the event shelter on the road with Berry on and this Breakfast Club top on, and I'm handing out flyers, you know, to loads and loads of vets, obviously. They've just had the parade, so the lads had marched past in the berries and medals. And there was a guy walking back down the hill, and he walked straight towards me. And as he got near me, he stuck his hand out and he went, you're Dereck. And I went, yeah. And he went, I just wanted to say, I wouldn't be alive today if it weren't for you. Stepped past me, carried on walking. I went, whoa. You can't just say that and walk off, you know, like that. And as he was walking away, I was looking at his back and his hand just went up like that and kept going because it clearly didn't want to say anything else. He didn't want to go into it or, you know what I mean? And he just said that to me. And he wasn't the first that's done that. So this organisation is saving lives because isolation is the biggest killer of veterans in the UK. Isolation kills more vets than anything else.
So, what have you thought about where this is going, where it's going to end up?
Well, the new we've had somebody come on board who is he's basically got access to a pot of money from the government that was ring fenced for retraining people that served in the military. So, say for example, you've got a guy who is a bus driver and he wants to be a train driver. How does he achieve that? You know, how does he go from one to the other? Well, he's going to need a shed load of money for one thing for the courses. Well, this money was ring fenced for that. So, but how this guy that came on board said the question for him was, well, how do I spend that money? How do I find these vets that want that training? How do I find these people that need the money to spend it on them? Right, I need to contact the biggest armed forces veterans organisation in the UK. Who's that? It's the Breakfast Clubs. So it basically came to us. So how about then I build a website for you using some of this money and people have to register to get on it and they become members of the AFVBC as in, you know, not just of their local club, but members of the organisation. And then we give them a profile. So we can add on things like DWP. Here's Recruitment, the biggest recruitment organisation arguably on the planet. They've signed up. DWP signed up.
Wow.
the RBL, we're talking to them, we're talking to SAFA, and the thing we're putting together now, we're kind of looking at a through life support platform. So if you just want to go to a breakfast club and just have a bacon butty and a bit of banter, you can do that. Or you can go on there and you can access employers that are looking for veterans. You can access training. You can get training. You can get that training for free. You can go through the jobs that's on there. You can have direct contact to the military charities. You can have direct contacts to any kind of help, mental health, Op Courage, NHS. So that's the idea. That's the thing we're developing at the moment. So,
I mean, this is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, amazing for some standing start.
An amazing achievement. So what? So I'm a serviceman listening to this. I've never been to a breakfast club. What's your advice?
Well, if you go to www.afvbc.world and just sign in, you sign as a click that you're a vet, put your regimental number and name in. The API check's not in place yet. That'll come up later, but people that have signed up will be verified. But as soon as they've done that and got a profile on there, they can find out their nearest club, and they can just turn up. They can just or do a search on Facebook. If they find a Facebook group, whatever area they live, if they do a search on Facebook for, like, I don't know, Stockton on Sea, put Stockton Armed Forces and Veterans Breakfast Club, put Stockton Veterans, they should find a breakfast club nearby. There's so many of them now. And just turn up, introduce themselves, ask for the admin, and they'll be made welcome. That's it. And they'll be returning to the tribe, as we say.
I guess when you're living it, you can share the experience with people that you know will understand because they've seen it, felt it, been there too. When you come out and you want to talk to me, who's never been there, you can't have the same conversation with me that you can have with somebody that was alongside you.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Because what's really interesting as well is the solution to a lot of these problems isn't a white coat and a clinical environment. It's a bacon butty and a chat with your mates.
Yeah, exactly. It is.
I think it's interesting also that you were obviously there 15, 20 years ahead of the game, but the idea of loneliness as a almost an illness, if you like, as is starting to become more mainstream. The advert that's gone viral about the old guy in the pub is obviously comes from a different place, but I think the symptoms are similar in that you used to belong to something. It might be your workplace, as you say, it might be family, it could be anything that you really felt was your center, that the thing that made you, and then it's gone. And I think, even people that have worked in a factory for 40 years and then they retire, that routine, that sense of seeing the same faces, knowing where you are, and where you're going to be for 8-10 hours a day, when that's taken away from you very suddenly, it's hard for people.
The question that every single person needs to ask themselves is, where's my tribe? You think about the street that you live on. I know the name of the next door neighbours either side of me. I don't really socialise with them. One or two people do that, you know what I mean? But in a tribal society, that whole street, everybody in it would know each other. They would know each other's names. They would talk to each other every day. And nobody would be lonely. Nobody would be isolated. Nobody would have the mental health issues that they've got now. But we all go home to our houses and sit in them row of houses, and we all sit in our own individual little houses with our wife and a couple of kids. But that's not tribe. That's just your family. And that's the thing. That's the thing. That there's always going to be something missing. That's why people are always out there looking for this elusive thing that's missing out of their life. And it's that. We've stopped being tribes. So,
brilliant. And very astute. Dereck, we're coming to the end.
Thank you.
I really, really appreciate your time. We apologise again for the sound quality in this episode. But we do hope you enjoyed the natter with Dereck and agree with us that this story needs to be heard. Do not miss the next episode, where you will be transported to the grain store during the December Rutland Branch Breakfast Club and can listen to us nattering with 3 veterans: Ian Reynolds, the Armed Forces Officer for Rutland County Council, Ian Rozelle, and 95-year-old John Bomber Beckett. When rain stops play, it's time for some pub natter. So that's a wrap, and thank you for listening to our latest pub natter. If you visit timothyives.com/pub natter, you will find photos, links, and more information about each episode. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and please subscribe to ensure you don't miss a pub or one of our amazing guests. The Pub Natter theme tune is by Tom Arnold. That was a Pub Natter broadcast.